Welcome back to teleSUR English. Now we go live to Colombia as the National Registrar Alexander Vega Rocha addresses the nation regarding today's presidential elections. Let's listen. So prior to this event, prior to the count of voting and also the addressing of Alexander Vega Rocha, we have some details and some data to offer. Because today, Colombia holds its presidential elections. This contention, this election, these polls are going to define maybe one of the most polarized scenarios in Colombia so far in the last 10 years, in the last decade. In this case, as we know, the main contenders are Federico Gutierrez for the right-wing coalitions, and also Gustavo Petro, because he is the contender for the part of the left wing, also the historical pact coalition. Petro, who is accompanied by Francia Marquez, they are this duo, this formula, this presidential and vice presidential formula that is going to contend the presidency and the vice presidency of Colombia. Let's remember these elections had a very, very wide campaign, a very wide also polarization and conflict. This had been marked by violence, and this has been marked by threats and by several complex political scenarios for both contenders and for both runners. In any case, we have several data, several information we could offer at this time regarding Colombia's presidential elections. Now we will offer this data as these polling stations are about to close, because as we know, they were opened at 8 a.m. local time in Colombia, and they are going to be closed like on 4 p.m. local time also. The National Registrar was offering several informations about maybe those polling stations that were about to close but were not closing at the time because they were in hard to reach areas in Colombia, in the mountainous regions, in the rural regions. So the officials of the National Electoral Council and the officials of the National Register were still counting, were still receiving people, and were still registering voters in those polling stations. As we know, these are one of the most polarized elections in the last decade in Colombia, because of these contenders represent. Gustavo Petro represents the people, represents also the left-wing coalitions. With him, there is Francia Marquez, who is the representative of the women, the Black, the Afro communities in Colombia, but also the campesino communities, because she is from Cauca, she is a campesino leader, she is an environmental leader, and also a social leader in her country, in her region, in her community. So the right-wing coalition is represented by Fico Gutierrez, who is running to remain in power with the Uribism. As we know, he is a representative of the Uribe current politics, and also Uribe politics in economies and in this neoliberal model. We have more numbers, we have data that we could offer regarding these elections. This information, we stress the information. We are expecting that the National Registrar, Alexander Vega Rocha, Colombia's National Registrar, gives an update on these presidential elections, given the fact that the polling stations are closing at 4 p.m. local time in all Colombia. We know that maybe our polling stations far away from the cities, far away from maybe some areas that are closing and that are still receiving maybe voters, but this is the time, the deadline, the final time to close the polling stations and to receive the voters. In this case, we are offering this special coverage of Colombia's presidential elections.
Medios de comunicación, a las campañas políticas y a todos los colombianos. Se han cerrado las urnas en el territorio nacional, cumpliendo nuestra jornada electoral de primera vuelta presidencial. Primero, un parte de tranquilidad, una jornada muy tranquila. De acuerdo a la información que me da el
According to the
Ministerio de Defensa,
information
el
we
señor
have from the
ministro
Ministry of
y el
Defense
señor ministro del Interior,
and the Ministry of the
no hubo
Interior,
traslados de puestos de votación en materia de orden público
voting stations were not necessary to
y se han
move
trasladado 32
regarding
puestos de
security.
votación por situaciones de ola
Instead,
invernal en el
but
país.
it was necessary to move them because of the climate.
Se aperturaron todas las mesas en el país.
All polling stations were open,
Informe positivo preliminar de las
which is
misiones de
a
los
positive
ejércitos electorales.
subject to rise.
Agradecimiento especial al señor presidente de la
I would
República,
like to thank the President of the
al Gobierno
Republic,
Nacional,
to the national government,
al Ministerio de las TIC por las transmisiones y comunicaciones
and all the media for the
realizadas para
coverage
este
they
conteo
have
preliminar.
done to this day. We initiate now the counting of the vote,
Procuraduría General de la Nación, Fiscalía General de la Nación,
along with
un saludo
the
especial a
national
las
prosecutor
militares y de policía
and
que
the
atendieron
police.
todos los puestos de votación. Deseo expresar un saludo muy especial
I would like to congratulate
a nuestra señora vicepresidenta y
to our
canciller de la
Vice
República
President
y el excelente trabajo que han brindado todos
and
los
all the
consulados
excellent work that has been done, all the consulates in our country.
Un saludo especial
A special greeting
a todos los funcionarios de la registraduría,
to
supernumerarios.
all people working for the
130.000
registry.
personas trabajaron hoy
More than
en la
100
registraduría
people
para
work
tener una
with us
jornada
today
exitosa.
in order to achieve a positive day.
Minutos arrancaremos el preconteo.
In the next few minutes, we're going to initiate the counting.
Igualmente arrancan las comisiones escrutadoras en todo el país. Recuerde que dentro del plan de acción
Let's
de la
remember
registraduría se va a aplicar un nuevo sistema de
that we are
preconteo.
going to use a new system to counting the votes.
Todos los datos empiezan a suministrarse
All
en
data
los 14 centros de
will,
procesamiento
will come from the 14 and all these voting centers in the country.
muy rápidamente,
We hope that very quickly we're going to be able to give the results
cada 5 minutos.
and to give updates every 5 minutes.
5 minutos dará mesas precontadas. Con este informe cerramos la
With this
jornada
report, we close the electoral voting day.
internacional
We thank our international.
en todo el territorio del país. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Gracias. Vamos a esperar cada
Let's
5
wait
minutos
for the updates every 5
no
minutes.
vinculantes informativos. Por favor, arranquemos el preconteo
Let's begin the counting.
informando. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
So we were listening to Alexander Vega Rocha, Colombia's National Registrar, who offered updates regarding today's presidential elections after the closing of the polling stations. Vega stated there will be preliminary counts every 5 minutes. We will offer you more details in upcoming news briefs. Stay with us.